r/am I the asshole stories. AITA for bringing my child to my sister's wedding? I, 33F, have a son Alfie, 9M. My sister Erin, 26F, just got married. On the invitations she asked that the wedding remain child-free. I don't personally agree with child-free weddings, but I respect Erin's choice, and I arranged for my friend to come up and watch Alfie for the day. The day of the wedding my friend called me and told me she was really sorry but wasn't feeling well and didn't think she would be up to watching Alfie. I really do appreciate her being mindful of that, especially as she ended up finding out it's COVID. But it left me in an inconvenient place because that was the only option I had even thought to line up, and I had to leave at noon. Friend called at 6:30. I really didn't know what else to do, so I ended up taking Alfie with me. It was a big wedding, so I didn't end up talking to Erin until the reception, which is good because she was pissed at me. She reminded me again that this wedding was not for kids, and for good reason, seeing as me and my parents were too focused on Alfie. He's a 9-year-old boy at a grown-up wedding he didn't know he was going to. I hardly think it's reasonable for us to not acknowledge him and how well he's doing. I said my sitter fell through, and Erin's husband said that's not our problem. She was just not going to drop this regardless of what explanation I gave, so my mom ended up taking Alfie home with her while Dad stayed at wedding. At that point the mood had been ruined and I was honestly just over it all, so I just left. Erin is still claiming I owe her an apology. I'm not sure what for, as it's not like I maliciously foisted Alfie on her. If she can't be civil to and about a little boy, I think that says far more about her. And she has a 4-mo daughter and she was there, so it wasn't even child-free on Erin's part either. I just want to know if I am really an asshole here. Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. And how come your mom took Alfie home, and you stayed? Damn, I'd be mad too if my mom left to babysit your child on my wedding day. Oh, I didn't even think of that. You're the a-hole. For not taking your own kid home. By your own account, you had 5.5 hours to find another babysitter, 4.5 if you needed to drive to them, and 3.5 including time spent getting ready for the wedding. What did you do during that time? Sit on your hands? A parent of a 9-year-old should have at least 3 babysitters on speed dial, as well as friends of the child whose parents might be prevailed upon to take the child, and give the kid and friend a fun day together, and friends of the parent who might take a 9-year-old for a few hours. Did you even try? It would take an hour to call all of your immediate resources. How much time did you give it before you threw up your hands? And once you'd called about 10 people and gotten 10 no's, did you then call your sister and explain the situation to her and ask her if you could bring your child? I'm guessing not. You don't respect child-free weddings. You made this happen. You're the a-hole. It sounds like it was mom's choice. And I can see why it was a hurtful thing of mom to choose. It would suck to have your mom leave your wedding early. To me it sounds like mom was siding with op. Maybe mom felt that sister was excluding family from the wedding, since this was the only way op could be there. Mom may not have been thrilled about the child-free wedding to begin with, and then was further upset that sister would rather op not attend at all, due to childcare canceling last minute, than have her nephew grandkid there. Maybe mom didn't like that husband said op not being able to attend was not our problem and felt that sister and husband should want op there. Maybe mom felt that it was a bad situation for her grandkid to be around grown-ups arguing about him and was upset at all of them. I don't know what mom was thinking. But mom didn't have to go. Op left too. And mom didn't try telling op to leave with Alfie. To me the issue is op should have at least tried to reach out to the couple and ask. Say her babysitter is sick last minute, she can't get anyone else, and can she bring him? At that point if sister bride cares about op being there, she will say yes, you can both come. But even if she might have given special permission, doing it as a surprise makes it rude. And it's much more likely to lead to a confrontation if you just have your kid at a child-free wedding without even trying to explain it in advance. If op really couldn't reach them, she could have come to the venue and then asked there and left if that's what sister wanted. Then again, maybe sister didn't really care much if op was there or not. This post does not read them having a great relationship, does it? Now for the next story. AITA for lying for my 15-year-old son? My son, 15, has a history of anxiety but has blossomed in the last couple of years socially, and now has 2 very different friend groups, his gaming friends that he played COD and shit with during the pandemic, and now his more social friends who have cars, go to the movies, football games, etc. I've always told him that if there is ever a time that he is in an uncomfortable situation he can always text me and I will help. I primarily meant this as a "sorry guys, my mom needs me to come home now" excuse if his friends were partying, experimenting with drugs, stuff like that. Well, today a couple of his gaming friends came home with school from him, and they all were playing, hanging out in his room. We ordered some food for them around 6. Shortly after, my son starts texting me, "Mom, please help me. They want to stay all night. I have plans with my other friends at 8. Can you tell them something to make them leave?" At first I texted him back and said, "Just tell them you have plans. It's no big deal. I can drive anyone who needs a ride home or whatever." But he said he didn't want to hurt their feelings, and I told him that if he ever needed my help getting out of an uncomfortable situation I would help him. He said he needed that help now. My husband read the texts and said, "No, absolutely not. He needs to be able to figure out how to deal with these sort of social situations himself, and that I shouldn't lie to make his less cool friends leave so he can go hang out with his more cool ones." But my son texted me a whole bunch more times in the next couple of minutes pleading with me for help. So around 6:30 I went up to his room and told them I don't mean to be the jerk here, but my son promised me he'd do a couple of chores for me tonight, and so everyone needs to go home by 7 o'clock. They all had some more food and then left, said goodnight and went on their ways. And I think this important here, I did make my son do a couple of the chores he'd been putting off for the week. So I didn't really lie. He did chores for me before his other friends came to get him at 8. My husband was not happy about this. He disagrees and says my son is too old now for mommy to be helping him like this. That these boys are going to be hurt if they see my son went out without them. I don't necessarily disagree, but I feel like I made this big deal in the past about saying if you ever need my help I've got your back, and my son called me on it. If I hadn't helped him now, there might be some time in the future when it is more serious and he needs my help but doesn't bother asking for it because of this. I also don't plan on making a habit of this. Also, I think my husband is upset about it because he sees himself at that age and sees my son dumping his gaming friends to go out with his cooler friends and probably identifies more with the gamers. We don't usually disagree so strongly about parenting our son. Now for the top comments. Nah. Your husband is right. He needs to handle these types of social situations on his own without you bailing him out. You're also right because in the moment was not the time to leave your son hanging. That said, you need to have a conversation with your son explaining that part of growing up means handling tough situations with friends and being able to do it truthfully. Tell him that major situations involving illegal activity or something that's not okay you will always have his back on. Time to let your son grow up. Not the a-hole. How many of us had a friend with a code word and story to get out of a blind or online date that wasn't going well? Or use husband-wife needs me, so sorry gotta go from a party where you made a diplomatic appearance but don't want to linger all night? Just more of the same. Too bad for dad if he over-identifies with gamers, it's not really the point. Son had plans, needed some assistance in wrapping up the prior ones. Now after a bit of thought, I think if he was maybe 12 then fair, but at 16 he needs to be taking responsibility for stuff like this. It's just saying like, sorry I've already made plans but how about next weekend? My worry is he's gonna make you out to be the bad guy like, oh yeah I wanted to but my mom sucks and made me do X, but I do understand exactly why you did it if you're worried about a regression. The thing with anxiety is it peaks right before you do the scary thing. So people avoid the scary thing, which over time makes the thing, in this case fear of hurting feelings, worse not better. It is fine to give him a chance, but you really can't bail him out again if you are committed to helping him manage his anxiety long term. Also, when I was a teen I would twist my parents' words to try and get out of things all the time. I knew what they meant, but I also knew where their weak spots were. Sure, your son is anxious, but that doesn't mean you didn't get played. Now for the next story. AITA for not voluntarily telling my dad's family where his remains are? Because they haven't asked? My father passed away last October after a close to 5-year battle with cancer, sarcoma, and the 1-year anniversary is coming up next weekend. His decline was incredibly rapid and sudden, and after about 2 weeks of being in the hospital he passed. It was during the middle of the pandemic, so I wasn't able to go see him and or talk to him much. He didn't want anyone to see him deteriorating, so he declined to do any at-home hospice care and kept his condition to just us. When he passed, he hadn't decided what to do with his remains. His father, my grandfather, told my mom to do what she wanted with them and that it was up to her. Our first thought was if he could be with his side of the family, but we found out his parents signed up for the Neptune Society and will be left at sea. They also did not disclose where any other of his relatives may be buried. We were not comfortable with the ocean option and were very fortunate to get a spot at the cemetery where my mother's family is buried. In the mausoleum there is a wall of niches and we were able to get a spot for my dad and mom that is only a few away from her parents. With the pandemic we held a small ceremony with just the three of us. My dad's side of the family has yet to go visit his resting place and haven't asked us where it is either. My dad was such a kind, respectful, and loyal family man that we can't believe how he's been treated in his passing. My uncles didn't try to step in at all when he was gone, and everyone from that side of the family has ignored me, my brother, and mother. They also didn't try to do anything for my dad when he was sick. For 5 years he had no visits from his family. I am not very close with my extended family and our time together was mainly holiday get-togethers. July was my dad's birthday. My grandpa called my mom the day before and she said the conversation was all about how my cousins came together for the day and how grateful my grandpa was for having everyone together. We were not invited. He then went on to ask how my dad's birthday was sometime this week, right? My mom said it was tomorrow and that she was planning to do something special with my brother and I, which was visiting his resting place. My grandpa didn't ask what we were going to do and I think he might have been afraid of the truth. In reality it could have been as innocent as eating my dad's favorite foods or seeing a movie. But no, he didn't ask or seem to care. My mom gave him the opening to ask and she was ready to tell him. I can't believe my dad's parents haven't gone to pay their respects. His brothers either. It breaks all of our hearts that he could be treated like this in death by his family. Especially after a year. Are we the assholes for not just telling everyone, or should we wait for them to ask? Now for the top comments. User avatar level 1 John 3681 middle.1D asshole enthusiast, 7, nah. Unless they're deliberately insulting your father, there's nothing wrong here. A lot of people don't visit final resting places out of a lot of emotions. My uncle didn't go to his brother's funeral because he was an emotional wreck. Grief hits all of us differently. They may not want to see your father for a good reason. A lot of people would prefer to remember someone's life, and visiting their gravesite doesn't let them. Nah, everyone reacts differently to death and after-death processes procedures. It varies greatly depending on your family culture. It isn't a slight against you or your dad that his family doesn't share the same view regarding remembrance after passing. My mom was cremated and I have her ashes. No one has gone to pay respects to her, either. We talk about her a lot and celebrate her in different ways, but I don't even think her siblings know where her ashes are or what happened to them. Some people prefer not to think about that stuff because it's too hard. Some people prefer to keep memories alive in other ways. There's not one way of doing it, and ways differing from yours are no less correct. No one should have to outlive their children. My mother's death shortened both my grandparents' lives. Things to consider: people do not grieve in the same way. It is highly personal. You will see lots of "Am I the a-hole?" post about families falling out or disagreeing with the way someone else behaved around a death. You are talking about two ends of the spectrum for your mom and dad's family on death. Mom's family like mausoleums and dad's family are putting bodies in the sea. Ignoring it is not an uncommon if unhealthy way of dealing with a death. Denial is part of grief. Grief can go on for years and years and some people never get over it. And sometimes families are just not that close. He was your father but their child. For your own sake you need to accept that they are not required to grieve the way your mother's family do, and even if they don't, that is not a reflection of how much they are or are not grieving. You anger at them for not grieving like you do could also be a part of your grief. Not the a-hole. But also no a-holes here. Your dad's family aren't necessarily being assholes either. I've never even asked where my mom's remains are because it doesn't matter to me, and I love my mom as much as she loved me, a lot, and miss her every day of the past almost 20 years. Don't get all bent out of shape because they don't seem interested in visiting his grave. Everyone processes death differently, and honestly you could push yourself into asshole territory by holding on to this. Now for the next story. AITA if I make my roommate pay more rent? Some backstory: this friend has been living with me for a while, and we split the bills fairly and equally. I own the house, and lived alone before letting them move in with me. I make less than them, and have more bills than them for my car insurance, phone provider, etc. It makes up a good difference of $300 more bills that I have to pay while making less than them. We split house cleaning, albeit they take more the main areas, and I handle other things. I have ADHD and will be the first to admit I forget my chores on busy days, while they're very much up in a tim when it comes to cleaning. The thing is, I'm very anal about how things are cleaned, and how my house and dogs are treated. They're very rough with handling my dogs, and I have begun to realize after the time we've lived together, their cleaning does not match up to how I want these cleaned. Dishes especially are not cleaned well, and I usually have to rewash them before I use them. I'm also the only one who cooks between us, and I drive them to work. I'm fully prepared to communicate my standards, and I would prefer just taking over all the house chores again and cleaning everything myself. But it feels unfair that I have to spend most of my income on bills and clean my house, while they get to do whatever while I'm working cleaning. Now I won't lie and say I can't feel the imbalance in pay, and it does suck to have to sit back and not join in on fun things because I can afford it, while they can. Buying themselves new games, clothing shopping frequently, eating out often, while I can't do those realistically on income. I don't want to think this idea comes from spite, but I can't deny there's envy there. So my question is, would I be the asshole to make them pay more in rent, if I take over cleaning the house entirely on my own again to make sure it's my standard, so that I can have more money to be able to enjoy myself and treat myself for my hard work? Edit: since people are focused on just the earning more than me part, which I already clarified is just a sucky situation, my question was about if I would be the asshole to make them pay more in rent because I would be the sole person in the house cleaning both of our messes, on top of taking them to and from work from 3 a.m. to 1 p.m. when I work evening shifts. They pay for half the car gas, and don't have a license, so them getting to their job falls on me. I am fine splitting everything, but if I do take over all the chores, and clean up after them too, and they have no household responsibilities, is where I would ask, would I be the asshole to ask for more rent to compensate for me working to take care of them more? Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. For thinking because they make more they should make your life easier. Your roommate's income is none of your business. You're the a-hole. Because you forget that your roommate is paying down your mortgage, you are financially advantaged in this situation. Charge a reasonable rent, increase it a little every year or you won't ever get them out, and be grateful you have the roommate. Seems that without them you could not afford the house at all. You're the a-hole. It's not their fault that they earn more than you. Honestly, if I were them I'd move out. You don't want to split things equally, you want them to subsidize your life. Sounds to me that you'd be better off living alone but you can't afford to. Again, that's a you problem, not a them problem. They're your roommate, not your partner, and even then feeling entitled to their money is assholey. Adjust your lifestyle to reduce your bills or pick up an extra job since you're not doing many hours. Practically though it's your house and you can raise the rent, just be sure to get it in writing. You're the a-hole. You're essentially the landlord here. You can't charge them more simply based on the fact you don't have as much money as they do. You agreed to a set amount on rent. You made an agreement and changing that based on the reasons you listed wouldn't be appropriate. Landlords do have the right to increase rates, especially if there is no lease, but bear in mind they could also choose to move out versus pay the increased amount. Then you would be down their portion of rent as well. It's unfortunate you are struggling financially and feel there is an unbalance in your current living situation, but how much they make versus you make should not play any part of the agreed upon rent when you all decided to live together. Well, that's all for the video today. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, have an amazing day.